All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Competitive Edge brought to you by esportsbet.io. I'm Semmler, and joining me, of course, will be Thorin, ready to get into obviously one of the biggest events of the year. The competitive calendar has really just been kicking off because we've had a nice long break. Players have had blast to warm up, and now we're going to get into the big IEM Cologne event of the year 2023. So loads of teams, basically the best in the world, huge broadcast talent. It's going to span 2 weeks, and it's going to be a wild one because everybody wants to win Cologne. It is the Cathedral of Counter-Strike after all. So, Thorin, how are you doing, dude?
Pretty good. I mean, this is actually, people don't know, easily my favourite event of the year. I mean, the real joke is, in the modern day, it's actually better that Katowice and Cologne aren't majors because the major format is actually worse. So if you look at it, what's brilliant about Cologne and Katowice is, even if you can argue, like obviously everyone thinks the way ESL does the rankings are a bit scuffed and intentionally so to favour their own tournaments. But since their tournaments are most of the year of the calendar, the good news about their ranking is this, similar. It means that if you notice, the way they invite teams means it's almost impossible to not get invited. You have to, like, basically, if you look at one of the few teams that didn't get invited, it's Virtus Pro, but that's because they just weren't in any tournaments for a billion years and they essentially did nothing and just sat around doing fuck all. So yeah, I think it's actually really well set up. Like, all the best teams get invited. The structure is really sturdy. These are also events that, even though they're not majors, they have the feel of a major. If you're inside the Lanxess Arena, I mean, there's a reason why people say like that's one of the ones they want to win, even when it's not a major. So I'm always looking forward to Cologne. I think it's also the perfect time of year. Everyone's got going.
Exactly. You're getting into the holiday season, so it's peak holiday season. People have got vacation time, so they can travel around. You're in Central Europe. It's easy to get to. They've still got buses coming from basically everywhere in Europe, so you're always going to have a crowd of guys to hang out with that are coming from like your nationality. If you want to be hanging out with the French guys cheering for Vitality, you're probably going to have a cheering section for Vitality. You know, that sort of thing is. It's always been one of the cooler hallmarks of Cologne, that it really does feel like this massive success of an international event. Usually you have to go to well, it's kind of hard to pull that off, but Cologne has managed to do it pretty much since day one, so good on them.
This episode of Competitive Edge is, of course, brought to you by Esports Bet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix, where they have their classic first-time deposit bonus, 50% up to 100 USDT, but they also, for a limited time only, have a new offer where you can get a free currency that you can exchange for USDT. Check out the website for more details. It's called ESC, and the way you can claim it is by doing any of the following three things. You can join the Esports Bet Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet. That will get you 10,000 ESC. You can follow Esports Bet on Twitter at esportsbet for 5,000 ESC, and you can follow esportsbet.io on Instagram for 5,000 ESC. What you do is go to the Discord, message the customer support or on the website, tell them you did any of these things, they'll verify as much, and then they'll credit your account with the ESC, where you can go and potentially change over for USDT. Check out esportsbet.io for more details.
Let's go ahead and hop right into our matches then, because we've got 8 of them to go through. Like you said, it's an interesting format. You have 8 directly qualified teams through the rankings and through other results, but then you actually have a play-in tournament that's allowing a lot of these lower ranking teams a chance to get into the main event. So we'll be kicking off this show talking about Ninjas in Pajamas versus Into the Breach. It's all just, you're going to have 8, real quick before I get this wrong. For whatever reason, I'm like, because the formats are always changing, is it a best of 3 or is it best of 1 in the first round? Opening matches are best of 1, right?
Yes, only the first match.
I'm glad I'm double checking that and not saying that this is a blast format where it's all best of 3. Best of 1 in the opening format. So NiP versus Into the Breach, what do you think?
I mean, the key thing here is, obviously, I'm going to take NIP. I mean, remember, this team just beat Vitality recently, so like a lot of people expect they should be at least decent. Then you have to add in Into the Breach. Like, look, this is where it's a bit scuffed, because on Twitter it said that Cypher, the best player from Into the Breach, had left the team, but never said where he's going to, because the rumours it might be TSM. And so also, then I believe it was said that like the Volt guy, I think maybe went to replace someone in Gamer Leagues or something. I believe it was something like that. So essentially, it's not the team you remember from the major, if everyone remembers that lineup. Like, as far as I know, well, okay, yes, they've got BMAS and Neofrag instead of the 2 players I just mentioned from before. Well, the problem is Cypher and Volt were probably the 2 best players I actually thought Into the Breach. So I expected the Breach to be much worse. I think the players have picked up aren't bad. These are sort of decent tier 2 people. Obviously, everyone was fairly hyped when these people got their spots on Mouz and OG respectively. So look, there's a possibility on a BO1. It's not implausible. But I think if you look at it, NIP is the better team. And then when I look at the odds, like, I don't hate the odds. If people wanted to do a one-off, it's a BO1. It's 2.67 for Into the Breach. I don't hate it. The problem is you are going going purely off variance. Like, we've never seen this lineup play. Like, I can't know if they'll actually be good, but I don't hate it in the sense that it is a BO1.
That's the brutal part about this play-in format as well. I mean, thing is, it is best of one. The opening match is best of one, but there is still a lower bracket to this, and then every match after that is going to be best of three. So even if you were to have this kind of upset scenario where Into the Breach were able to get that upset win best of one, it's not like Nipper going home. They're still going to be able to battle back through.
The problem is, though, 1.417 NIP is not reliable enough. Like, even with this lineup, there's still a team where like you can flip a coin. You don't know how they'll turn up each day. So I wouldn't bet on them to win. I would avoid that.
That's the tricky bit. So it's whether or not you're feeling Into the Breach for this best of one, or if you're going to go, or you just skip this one entirely. Okay, so given that, let's go ahead and actually, so there you go. ITB 2.6. Interesting to bet on them to see best of one again. You always have that potential, and the odds aren't terrible. The next one, though, this is the one that had me kind of pausing, because again, best of one is the Mongolz versus Mouz Sports, and they have the Mongolz at 4.4 versus Mouz with 1.1. Now, keep in mind, Mouz are also a team that have made some changes recently. They've got Shuhei on board now. He's reunited with his old teammates. So I'm kind of curious to hear what your thoughts are going to be for this new Mouz roster, and what do you think they're going to be capable of doing here? Is Mongolz a threat?
The problem is, in theory, when they were IHC, they were very impressive, but people don't know the weird thing about the swap from IHC to the Mongolz is they lost one of their best players, which is, I still don't really understand it myself. I mean, it's what Blair himself on all those watch parties kept talking about. So I actually think they're less of a threat, the teams, than Mongolz. And then also, I actually think the pickups that Mouz did were pretty good. They not only got Shuhei back in, and this is a key part people miss, because you've got to keep track of the news and see what each thing connects to, because no one's going to spell it out for you in Counter-Strike. Basically, Torshi, right around the time that Dexter was getting released and they were bringing back Shuhei, and like it's implied there was a buyback clause or something in his contract or whatever. When they brought him back, Torshi did this interview where he just complained that Dexter essentially expected him to actually be a big boy and know where to go on the map and shoot people with the AWP. And he said that Shuhei basically just used to micro him and tell him like, right, peek now, don't peek now, pull back. Right. On the one hand, that's mad embarrassing. I can't believe someone would even say that and expect they could play like professional tier 1 Counter-Strike as an AWPer on massive lands and go, why am I not winning? Like, if the others aren't doing that, mate, they're not having to, like, Carrigan's not going, come on now, bro, Key, it's an airplane. Oh, I missed your mouth. Like, he just lets him go do him, mate. So the weird thing about that is, on the one hand, it's whack if you're a Torshi fan, but it does imply Shuhei's coming back now. So maybe Shuhei actually is like the Torshi whisperer. That's the part that you could get hyped about. So I actually think this is a great addition from Mouz. I was never a Dexter fan anyway. I think this is a level up. Obviously, he's played with a whole bunch of these players before. And then the one that went under the radar is JDC, who essentially, as far as we know, made this roster, got removed in exchange for Jim Fat, who, if people don't remember, is the brother of Sergey, the old ENCE player. Now, this is a player where people have been hyping that he's got a lot of potential and a lot of skill. So, actually, when I look at this lineup, it looks like actually it's probably a sleeper roster. I think it looks pretty good. So, even though, look, with the odds being ridiculous, like they have 1.167, I wouldn't say bet Mouz. So, look, I don't hate the idea you do a BO1 on Mongolz. They have 4.47, but I do think this new Mouz squad actually can be a solid squad. It looks like it can make more of the pieces it has if the Shuhei angle is accurate. And then the Jim Fat one's just an interesting move. Like, actually like the sort of setup of the players here. I just think this particular game is just a bit of a trap.
Yeah, this is the one where you wish that you had a best of 3 option, or that it was going to be a best of 3, because then you could at least bet on Mouz to win in 2 or something like that, and get some interesting odds there. But yeah, I agree. This 1.1, it's a bit rough. So moving into our next one, OG versus 9. This is one where, man, it feels like it could go anyway. 1.8. 1.816 for OG, 1.888 for 9. So clearly the guys who are setting the odds are thinking this is a bit of a coin toss. This is going to be a very close match, and it's very tough to call who's going to come out on top. So I'm curious to hear. Do you think the polls have what it takes to get a win over OG in a best of 1 format? Do you think these odds are worthwhile?
I will almost never, ever bet a single BO1 with odds like this, because what the odds say is it's a coin flip, so then what's the point in betting it? Like, the odds aren't a coin flip, but it's a coin flip match. So, like, I personally think these games are trap games. You only ever bet this if you actually think that, like, essentially people are being too biased to the underdog and they've bet the odds up so that actually you're getting a true favourite at, like, 1.8. That's ridiculous. But if you look at this matchup, nobody can know how OG will do. It's almost impossible to know if they'll actually be any good. 9 was an all right squad going into the major. Didn't make use of the window they had there where people thought they were going to be hyped and go and do some stuff with that Swiss system. So I think both teams are massively unreliable. It's a BO1, and then look at the odds. So to me, I think you stay clear of this one. Like, I don't care which side you bet on this one, but I would just stay clear of it. I don't think there's any point betting this one. There's better odds out there.
Okay, so I'm curious to think, yeah, exactly, if the next match is the one that you think that there's better odds on, because Complexity have got 1.98 going up against Fnatic, 1.736. I mean, again, is this still too close for you, or do you think that Complexity could have some upset potential here at almost 2-to-1 odds?
Right, the key thing for me here is obviously no one really knows how good the new Fnatic's going to be. I actually personally suspect it might be a little bit whack. I'm not a big fan. Like, they added Dexter. Exactly. The Afro guy at least had some potential. So to me, I actually think I probably favour Col here. So actually, I would say I would do a cheeky underdog bet on Col on this one. Like, Col actually looks all right. The addition of Elige looks solid. They've already got a core that's existed for a while. They're not messing around with IGL like some of the other bits. So I think this is just a move you do. I don't mind the Col underdog here. I'm taking this one for the BO1.
I was hoping that you would say that, right? Because when I took a glance at that, I was like, really, this is pretty good for Complexity. Yeah. And you're looking at the Fnatic roster. You're not really, like you say, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. Mezzi's no longer going to be the IGL. You can assume Dexter's going to be taking that role over. So they're going to be shifting things around. Then you're going to have Crims and Roy getting comfortable in Afro. Like, it feels like there's a lot of moving pieces here. Whereas Complexity, it feels like, you've got Elige, and if Elige is feeling the tournament, it's going to be real fun to watch him just smash some heads. And you're hoping to see that kind of turnaround on Elige. So yeah, okay, cool. I like that. I like that read. A cheeky underbet on underdog bet on Complexity. All right, Liquid versus Astralis, a rematch. Very early on rematch here after the recent Blast Fall groups, where Astralis actually took Liquid to task. So do you think Astralis can repeat that performance, or do you think that Liquid are going to have a little bit of time to adjust and figure out how to get the Danes?
Right, the main problem with this matchup is I think this is also another very tricky one to bet. Both teams can clearly win the game. I certainly don't think Astralis is some like big favourite. I think actually the odds are pretty fair. I probably think Team Liquid's lineup is slightly better. At the same time, even though essentially the problem with the Astralis lineup is I don't believe it has a big ceiling, but I actually don't think it's a terrible lineup. I think it's just a bit whatever. And then the Team Liquid one's more like, I think the ceiling's pretty good. I just don't really know where the floor of the team is from game to game. Like, I think Yukindar's IGLing style probably won't be as good as he hopes it will be. So actually, this is more one where I would probably say just bet it if you think Astralis wins. If you actually favour them, do the Astralis bet. If not, I would just leave it. Hard to tell with Team Liquid where they are right now.
It's just so tempting. And, it's just so tempting because Astralis at almost 2-to-1 odds as well. It is a tough one. It is a tough one, but
I don't hate the Astralis underdog bet. I think they can win.
Exactly. I think that they could win on that one as well. So personally, I'm going to go ahead and take the risk, and I'll put a cheeky underdog bet on Astralis here to take down Team Liquid. And a best of one, they could definitely keep it going. So I'm going to go for that one. Now, the next one coming up after that is going to be Monte versus Imperial Esports. So this is one where I feel like Monte kind of dropped the ball. They had some opportunities to really shine earlier on in the year, and then we didn't really get to see that come through for them. But now Imperial Esports, we're going to be wondering how they're going to be faring now that Fallen is no longer in the picture, and what kind of performance are we going to be able to expect to see from them, given the fact that they've had to change IGLs. So, I mean, do you have any kind of read on this one coming up?
I mean, the key thing is, obviously, Monte doesn't have Boros anymore, who was the main person who was fragging out of control at the majors. So to me, Monte is just living off name value. I don't even know how they've been bet up so much. Meanwhile, when you go and look on the other side at Imperial, yes, Imperial lost Fallen, right? So in theory, some elements of the experience of the team will go. That's not a bad lineup of players, though. When you go and look who they've actually put in instead. So they've got Boltz, Vinny, and Phelps. So they've got Phelps in, and they've got Henny and Jota, who've played in like MIBR lines. This is actually a pretty solid group of 5 players. Like, I actually favour Imperial. I like the odds. The odds are quite high. It's at 2.32. I'm going to take Imperial to win this one.
Okay. Over Monte, 1.5 for Monte. We're not really feeling that they've got what it takes after that last.
This is more like a coin flip for me.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough. Okay. So Imperial over it. We're going to have some Brazilian hope going into the opening round of this tournament. Happy to hear for their sake, because now we're going to be going into Furia versus Grayhound. And I mean, well, you think that Furia are in a position to win this. The odds certainly favor them, 1.243. So the odds setters are thinking that they are going to be the ones to get the job done here in a best of one. But this is Grayhound Gaming, and well, Grayhound Gaming. It feels like, are they the upset kings? Are they the ones who are there to fuck their pick'ems again?
There's no pick'ems there, so obviously they'll just have to just remain a bad team that doesn't have any impact on the tournament. Oh, great. There's no external meta context. Brilliant. They're not going to do anything here. Like, the problem here is there's never even any rhyme or reason when they win games as to how they do it. Like, I don't even know how they get those odd wins in the Swiss systems at majors, but I wouldn't bet on them is the problem. And obviously the side for Furia is way too low. I do think Furia is actually going to be a dark horse team. I think they could be pretty solid with this lineup. So I would just say I'd avoid all bets on this one. I think it's a bit of a trap game.
Okay. That's interesting to hear. Because as far as Fury is concerned, it feels like they were so lackluster. But do you think that the addition of Fallen to this roster is going to be what they need, the juice that they need to get the?
Because the key thing is none of them are good enough on their own. Fallen's not a good enough opera on his own. Fallen's not a good enough in-game leader on his own. Art's not a good enough IGL on his own. Art's definitely not a good enough opera on his own. But by committee, they can actually do it. Because if you look at the team, when they were at their best is when Art is more like a secondary caller, which fits his style of play. So make him the secondary caller. Then Fallen doesn't have to do it all. He's got Gary as well. He's got a whole team around him. If anything, they probably just need simple fucking tactics in this team. Then you've got amazing riflers in Keserato and Yuri. It's banging already right there. And then even Fallen's style of AWPing is low econ AWPing. He doesn't require a lot of resources. I actually think, and then finally you've added Cello, who was easily one of the best pieces of Imperial. Like, I actually think this team's going to work, man. I think it's going to fit the roles. And essentially, it's not that Fallen's going to be some like big game change. It's just that he will sort of add his own little bit and then everyone will add their part. And at the moment, in my opinion, if you look at it, the roles aren't messed up anymore. I actually think Art, when he's not the IGL, will be fine. So I think this actually has a chance to be a very solid team. I think it could be like 5th or 6th best team.
Okay, good to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing it. There's too much talent on this team to see them, flounder around. You really do want to see like Keserato, guys like him and Yuri go deep in tournaments. They've got so much firepower. All right, last match of this first round, the play-ins here for IEM Cologne will be Apeks versus Big. And so Big 2.29 or 2.229 odds, whereas Apeks have 1.583. So as far as the odds makers are concerned, Apeks are in the lead on this one. They seem to be having ESL World Ranking EU. They're getting the invite through that to this play-in. But I feel like Big, they actually had a little bit of an opportunity to show us something. They beat some teams. They beat Astralis at Blast. They got a close loss versus Navi, 16-14 on Mirage, but then went on to beat OG and put up a fight against Vitality. So I mean, it's like, is it that clear cut of a match here? Do you think that Big could just get rolled this hard for them to have the odds go against them this way?
I have no idea why the odds are so bad. Like, the silliest thing to me is if you go and look, this is where people have wasted so many narratives on that major that was never, ever going to happen. None of the fucking teams kept their players, guys. So when you think, wait a minute, I know this team, Apeks. Oh, you mean that brilliant one? JL? No, he plays in Navi. He's already in Navi, mate. So who did they bring in? Another massive name, right? No, and another fucking Macedonian player that you've never heard of. So that makes it, look, there's still an all right squad. Like, Nork's a solid player. Steeko's legit. Jacob, I'm a fan of Cuban, obviously. But you did lose some of your firepower in JL. He was one of the better, like, fraggers in your team. So I think you'll take a little bit of a hit if you're Apeks. I think they're just living off their name. Meanwhile, Big's a good underdog upset team against real teams. Like, look, they have actually done something very weird to their roster, Sam. Like, are you ready? They've ruined the whole identity. So the only reason Tabson stayed in Big all these years is because it's so important that German forget all that. They speak English now, by the way. Because even though they haven't got him at this tournament, they had Mantu. I mean, maybe for this one they'll speak in German because they've got an Austrian player. But when Mantu plays normally, they have to speak in English. So they've already gone to English. Then Tabson isn't IGL anymore. I think the Sin guy's the IGL now. And then obviously Sirison benched himself and he's just potentially, well, the rumour is maybe he goes to TSM or something. And so they haven't got the offer either.
With Sirison recently, so worth mentioning if you want to hear more about what Sirison has to say, go and check out Thorin's YouTube channel. He did a good Reflections episode with him.
So basically, every aspect of identity of Big just doesn't exist anymore. But they do still have a bunch of like not bad players. Tabson's pretty good. Obviously, he's not IGL, and maybe he can even frag out more. I actually think this is just a good big angle. Like, I don't really see what there's to hit on. The odds are pretty nice for them. It's a BO1. Why can't they win a BO1 here if you don't know? This is a team quite famous for like anti-strat and scouting the opponent. So I'd expect they'll be pretty planned. They're good at the veto, good in BO1s. I think it's a big angle, mate, all day long.
Well, I'm happy to hear it. So that was the last match of the play-ins here at Cologne. Going into it, 8 matches to open things up. We've definitely had some matches that were a bit too hot to handle. We have some matches that we're feeling confident in. And before we close the show, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick, because I know that you did another video as well recently predicting who you thought was actually going to take the event. So do you want to give us your thoughts on that real quick before we sign off?
Obviously, people can watch it on this video, on this channel, the video in question. Basically, I think, like, if you look at the odds, someone like FaZe is pretty good. I think they were 10-1 or something. The really crazy upset, like, outsider ones is, if I've never seen them play, so I can't bet on them, but you could do a Cloud9 one if you want. They're obviously pretty high odds. It's a super team. And I think actually the Na'Vi one's a nice little sleeper, because, I mean, they do have Alexi being simple. Who knows what's possible there? So if you just check out the odds, you'll see it in that video. Like, I've gone for some of the bigger ones for that one. I think it's actually quite hard to pick the outright winner, because there's 3 or 4 teams could win.
Yeah, that's the thing, especially after that. That was what was really refreshing about this, is to see just kind of what shape the teams were in coming out of the player break, going into Blast, and now going into this event. And it does feel like FaZe could be it. Vitality could do some damage. Heroic are looking good. I mean, it's exciting. This is going to be a great tournament. So, you know, on that note, thank you very much, Thorin, for your analysis and your thoughts on who you think is going to take this and how we should bet. And also a big thank you to esportsbet.io for making these streams and videos possible. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.